Good morning and welcome to the Propeller Club of Northern California. I'm Stas Margaronis, and this is our belated Maritime Day 2024 presentations. We have two presentations this morning. The first one is with our California ports, as well as with the American Waterways operators and AERAS technology, which has a new scrubbing technology that is being deployed at several California ports. Our next panel, which will start at 11 o'clock, will feature U.S. carriers, and we'll be hearing from PASHA, National Shipping, San Francisco bar pilots, and we will also have Nick Marrone. So I want to begin by welcoming people and introducing who is here. I'll try to do that quickly because we have a very, very long agenda today. And Todd, I will start with you if you wouldn't mind introducing yourself.
Sure. Todd Cross Design. We provide a website design, development, hosting, and IT support and more.
Very good. Thank you very much. Greg Alexander. Greg, good morning.
Hey, good morning. Greg Alexander with AERAS Technologies. Hey.
Thank you. Now I see iPad Nick. Is that Nick Marrone?
Yeah, that's me, but I don't see me.
Well, we hear you.
Fat guy. I see this fat guy there. I don't know what I did. I didn't do. Oh, start video. There we go.
There you are. Good morning, Nick.
Good morning. Good morning.
Okay. Charles LABITAN, good morning.
Good morning.
Why don't you introduce yourself?
Charles LABITAN. I'm the Business Development Manager, Marketing Manager for the Port of San Francisco.
Thank you very much, Charles. KRISTINE ZORTMAN. KRISTINE, good morning.
Good morning, Stas. Thank you for having me. KRISTINE ZORTMAN, the Executive Director at the Port of Redwood City.
Thank you. TOREY PRESTI.
Good morning, Stas and everybody. Happy Maritime Week.
Thank you very much, TOREY. Thank you for all of your help. My trip to Taiwan is progressing, and in much part to your help. Thank you very much for your assistance.
We got to get you in and out before the Chinese invade.
Thank you, TOREY. You made my day.
I'm joking. I'm joking. You're in good shape.
All right.
Bring chopsticks.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Nick. Aaron, good morning. Aaron, would you introduce yourself?
Yes, good morning. My name is Aaron DeHart, and I'm an end of voyage manager with Storm Geo.
Good morning.
Always
Thank
good to
you.
see everyone.
Thank you. Okay, Peter SCHRAPPEN.
Good morning. Hi there, Peter SCHRAPPEN, Vice President for the American Waterways Operators.
Thank you very much, Peter. Captain Ann McIntyre. Captain Ann, are you there? We will come back. Chris, oh, Ann, are you there? There you are.
Apologize, I did not consent. I didn't hit the consent button to being recorded, but now I've agreed. So, hi, good morning, Ann McIntyre. Happy belated Maritime Day, everybody. Business Director, San Francisco bar pilots.
Thank you very much, Ann. Chris Gallup.
Good morning, this is Chris Gallup from Hornblower Cruises and Events in San Francisco. I also sit on one of the committees for the Passenger Vessel Association.
Thank you very much, Chris. Ed Washburn. Good morning, Mr. Washburn.
Good morning, Stas. Happy Maritime Day, everybody. I'm Ed Washburn from PASHA, Hawaii.
Thank you. Emiliano Beas.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Hi, yeah, my name is Emiliano. I'm with CARB. I'm just here to listen in.
Great. Welcome. Emily Sinclair. Emily, good morning.
Good morning. Happy Maritime Day. Emily Sinclair with the PASHA Group.
Good to see you, Emily.
Good to see you.
Jennifer Radix.
Good morning, Jennifer Radix Johnson with Cal Maritime.
Good to see you, Jennifer. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks, Stas.
Kevin Policarpo. Kevin, good morning.
Good morning, Mr. Stas. Hello, everyone. My name is Kevin Policarpo. I work as Mr. Margaronis' research assistant for multiple topics, ranging from maritime to global events and whatever he deems fit to work on.
Which can be changed on a moment's notice. Thank you very much. Matthew LaFiandra. Matthew, good morning.
Good afternoon, everybody. Matt LaFiandra, CEO of Ocean Solutions, coming to you from our New York offices today.
Oh, lucky you. And how is New York this morning?
Lovely, but yesterday was very, very exciting. Let me tell you, a lot of rain, a lot of storms. It was something else.
There's no such thing as global warming, Matthew. Okay. Thank you, Matthew, and good to have you with us.
Thank you.
Lizzie Melgoza.
Yes, good morning, everyone. My name is Lizzie Melgoza, and I work for CARB and just listening in.
Okay. And for anybody who doesn't know what CARB is, that is the California Air Resources Board.
Thank you.
Nick Storelli.
Hi, good morning, everyone. Nick Storelli, Air Engineer with CARB.
Thank you very much. And Brother Peter Dreyfus, good morning. And what an honor to have you with us. I mean, we see you so seldom, Brother Dreyfus. And we're still not seeing you. Where are you? Peter? All right. We will come.
He's come in a few times, so he might be having a problem.
We'll get back to him. Peter Olney. Brother Olney, good morning.
Yeah, good morning. Peter Olney, ILWU Organizing Director, retired.
And we just had a very interesting presentation last week, didn't we? Peter and I were at a presentation given by Wade Rathke, the founder of the Association of Community Organizations for Reform Now, which currently is setting up short distance radio for community organizations. Welcome, Peter.
Thank you.
We have Brother Peter Dreyfus. Good morning, Brother Dreyfus.
Good morning, everybody, and especially Stas, El Presidente. I represent Watermaster. We manufacture a shallow water dredger. Thank you.
Thank you. And I see somebody named Steve.
Yeah, hi, my name's Steve Schlinkert. I'm with the End of Voyage Department at Storm Geo. Thank you for having me this morning.
Very good. Welcome. And we have Brother Ron Brown.
Good morning, everyone. I do not have an action video this morning because with the long weekend, I decided not to shave and I didn't want to scare everybody this morning. So Ron Brown and the Maritime Marketing Group at the Port of Oakland.
Welcome, Ron. Good to have you with us. And we have another person who is another guest appearance, and that is Susan Ransom from SSA. Susan, good morning.
Good morning, everybody. Susan Ransom, Client Relations Manager at SSA, and looking forward to our conversations.
Thank you, Susan. Tony Petronio. Tony, good morning.
Good morning, Stas. Good morning, everybody. Tony Petronio, General Manager, RA Operations at Storm Geo.
Good to have you with us. And I see Troy Weber.
Yes, good morning. I'm with CARB, and I work with Emiliano in the Freight Technology section.
Very good. Welcome. And somebody named Vic, V-I-K.
I'm also with CARB. My name is Vika Chandra, and I'm also listening in.
Okay, great. And Jean-Lee Wang.
Hi, my name is Jenny Wang with the CARB.
Very good. Welcome. Okay, I think that did I get everybody, Todd?
My name is Michael McGillicuddy. I
Oh,
think you skipped me, but yeah, I'm Michael McGillicuddy with Storm Geo, route analyst.
Mike, I'm sorry, these names jump around on my screen here. Is there anybody I missed?
Hard to keep track, so if anybody missed, speak up.
Okay. Very good. Okay, so on that note, I am going to begin by introducing KRISTINE ZORTMAN, who is the Executive Director of the Port of Redwood City. And she'll be followed by Charles LABITAN from the Port of San Francisco, Ron Brown, Port of Oakland, Peter SCHRAPPEN from AWO, and in cleanup, Greg Alexander, AERAS Technology. KRISTINE, good morning. And KRISTINE, is it fair to say that nobody knows more about dredging as a port director than you do?
Maybe that's fair to say. I don't know that I'd want to bestow that on any other port director though, so. Thank you for having me, Stas. And thank you all. Happy belated Maritime Day as we extend our maritime discussions the day after Memorial Day. Todd, if you want to bring up my PowerPoint. Today I'm going to be talking a little bit about the Port of Redwood City, for those of you who don't know a little bit about us. And then I thought that we would take a little different perspective and help you understand what goods movement means here at the Port of Redwood City and impacts to our supply chain and what that actually means to the consumer at the end of the day. So next slide, please. So we'll be going through just a brief introduction, as I mentioned, a little bit more about the Port of Redwood City, our maritime commerce, the markets that we touch within our supply chain and our partners, our marine highway as it relates to the Greater Bay Area ports, our role here for the South San Francisco Bay and the peninsula, the broader region for emergency preparedness, and then a conclusion at the end. Next slide, please. So the Port of Redwood City, for those of you who are unfamiliar, we have 120 acres here. We were established in 1937. However, the port was used in the 1850s to build out the broader San Francisco Bay Area. The redwoods were harvested from the hills and the mountains here, and then the port was able to deploy those redwoods, turning them into lumber for a lot of our major cities in the growth. We are a true intermodal port. For those of you that know, that just means that we have three ways of getting in and out of the port and moving our cargo, rail, water, as well as roadways. We do reach significant global markets here in the Port of Redwood City, including Asia, both North America, South America, Australia, and other areas of cargo operations. We do primarily importing of the raw construction materials that are coming in to build out the broader Silicon Valley, as well as recycling. So we do scrap metal recycling as well as liquid bulk recycling. And then in 2017, FEMA designated our port as a federal staging area, and that was because of the significant financial investment that the port made into several of our wharves and our berths here, over $21 million. To be able to have a wharf that could accommodate an 8.9 magnitude earthquake, as well as accommodate 3 to 5 feet of sea level rise. And I believe that we were the first port who invested that kind of money into our infrastructure to really plan for the future here in the Bay Area. Next slide. So the Port of Redwood City has three primary pillars of business. Our maritime commerce is our economic engine. That's how we're able to deliver to the community benefits, as well as be able to activate our waterfront for recreational waterfront activities, including our marina and other activities on the weekends, concerts, drone shows, and other things. And then we also have our final pillar, which is serving Silicon Valley. And when we think about serving Silicon Valley, we mean the broader area. That harkens back to the FEMA designation, as I've mentioned, as well as future ferry service and other things that can better and improve Silicon Valley and the broader peninsula region. Next slide, please. So for today's discussion, I just kind of want to focus a little bit on maritime commerce. So obviously, for those of you that are familiar with ports, you know, getting goods in and out of your wharf, across your wharf, in and out of your port is obviously making sure that we're always competitive in the global market and that we're sustainable, and what we're doing here is sustainable for us. So, you know, everyone understands that water transport is the least expensive mode for cargo transport. One vessel that visits our port, bringing in raw cementitious product, is about 2,200 truck trips that we are eliminating from our roadways. So if we didn't have a port here at the Port of Redwood City, those trucks would most likely go into areas like Stockton, where they also take similar type product. They would then be trucked down our freeway system into the South San Francisco Bay Area. So it is important for us to have a port. It also obviously is important for air emissions and the intrinsic environmental benefits that we can get from cargo operations here at the port, as well as making sure that the infrastructure that we're using is our wharves, and it's not our everyday roadways that our commuters and other residents are using for their daily commutes. Next slide, please. So the port has a partnership with the Army Corps of Engineers, and we are a non-federal sponsor. And this is important for us in understanding the supply chain impacts when we think about our port here. So obviously, if we are bringing in raw cementitious products to build out Silicon Valley and we are recycling materials for export, we need to make sure that our channel is adequately judged to be able to move those goods economically, as well as keep us competitive. So our channel has an authorized depth of -30 feet. We have historically been a channel that was dredged every 2 years. The Corps, however, based upon feedback that they were getting from both the port and port partners, did several years ago to come to the conclusion that based upon our tonnage, which averages around 2 million metric tons per year, that we did warrant annual dredging. So this past season was the first year we commenced annual dredging at our port. It also was the first year that our port's dredged materials were able to facilitate one of the Corps' 1122 pilot projects through WRDA. And that was with the strategic placement of our bay dredge materials over adjacent to Eden Landing. And that strategic placement of materials is being monitored to see if in fact this is a viable solution, disposal solution for dredge materials, which then can benefit living shorelines and more nature-based solutions in looking at sea level rise. And of course, we work with the Corps on appropriations and making sure that the bar pilots are involved as well as it looks to channel restrictions at our port. Next slide, please. So this is a good slide. I just kind of wanted to orient you with where the Port of Redwood City is. You can see it here on the slide. It is about 18 nautical miles from the head of San Francisco Bay. It takes a ship around 3 hours to get down to our port. And really when we think about our supply chain here, we think again about those raw materials that are coming into our port and they're being processed and being distributed to whatever contractors or other firms that may be deploying them back into the region. And then at the end, you can see, and this I think is important to understanding the supply chain economics here at our port, how it is passed on to the end consumer or the customer. So at any point in time, when you look at this flow chart, if there are charges that are being incurred, whether it's being incurred by the ship's agent, the shipper, the port, or the manufacturer, whoever, those again costs are passed on down to the consumer. And this is important when you think about materials that are building out the greater Silicon Valley and the impacts that this port may have should it not get dredged. And so the next slide, we're going to talk a little bit more about what those financial impacts mean to the consumer when we don't have a channel that is dredged adequately. So our next slide. So this has got a lot of words, but I think it's really important for us to understand. So as I mentioned, we are happy that the Corps now judges us on an annual basis, and that's to keep us at minus 30 feet. So typically a vessel that's coming in, they can take anywhere from 40,000 metric tons and up. For every foot that we lose in our channel, that is equivalent to 5,000 metric tons of cargo. So we recently were at minus 23 feet. That was our operating depth for our channel, and that was probably over a period of 7 to 8 months. And when you think about what that means to the consumer, that means that there is a lot of double handling that is going on, because the 5,000 metric tons of cargo have to then be double handled, placed onto a barge. So in 2020, we had our trade partners Z do a look at what that means for them. And what that meant for them was an additional $2 million that they were incurring for each year that they didn't have adequate channel dredged here at the port. And so those monies are again passed on to the consumer. So in our case, when you think about why affordable housing cannot be affordable, that $2 million is passed on to the consumer. And that every time we do not get dredged adequately, that is an impact to the consumer on the goods that we bring through our port here. Next slide. And this is just kind of a highlight of the other impacts that obviously all of our shippers have to take into consideration in coming 18 nautical miles down to the South Bay, the several bridges they have to go under, and then they have to deal with channel restrictions, which hopefully most of the time they don't. Next slide. So again, if we think about making sure that our channel is dredged adequately, we also want to make sure that it's dredged appropriately. Should we have an earthquake, we need to be able to deploy our first responders and resources coming into the region. And we also need to be able to provide adequate possibilities for people to be deployed from our region for resources and to be able to get to first responders. So it is important as we partner with our agency that we continue to have a seat at the table, both the port as well as the bar pilots, to make sure that the annual dredging that the agency is doing, the federal agency, is adequate and takes into considerations the priorities that just the port has, but also our bar pilots. And the next slide. So if you think about the goods movement, you understand a little bit more about the impacts that we suffer and we face when we have to deal with additional impacts to our bay, to our channel, as well as making sure that we are completely prepared should we need to deploy first responders and resources. And I think the other thing that's critical is making sure that we're always keeping in sight the fact that ports are huge employers. They're the jobs that we create here are high-paying blue-collar jobs. We want to be able to maintain our ports. We want to be able to maintain good goods movement, as well as making sure that we can deliver during times of emergencies. And that concludes my presentation today.
Kristine, thank you very much. And clearly, dredging is a big part of the challenges that are facing you, correct?
Correct.
And hopefully it is going to get better this year.
Yes.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Our next speaker is Charles LABITAN from the Port of San Francisco. I just want to remind our panelists that I would like you to stick to the 10-minute rule. I'll send you a warning when you're at 8 minutes so that we can stay on schedule. Charles is a board member of the Propeller Club of Northern California. Charles, good morning.
Good morning, Stas. Good morning, everybody. Happy to be here. Wanted also to congratulate Stas on putting this together for Maritime Day, even though it's belated. And let me see, I'm going to be sharing my screen since I did not send it in. Make sure I do this right. Okay. Yeah. There we go. Can everybody see that?
We can see it. Thank you.
Yeah. So I'm with the Port of San Francisco, and Kristine did a wonderful job explaining what a port does and how ships enter the bay and make it down to Redwood City. However, they do pass San Francisco up here. So what I'm going to focus on today is really where the Port of San Francisco is at in terms of its business and trends and what our plans are for the future. As most of you know, Port of San Francisco is very diverse. We have commercial operations, we have Fisherman's Wharf starting all the way up from Pier 39, going all the way down to Pier 96. Along the way, we have the ferry services, we have cruise ship, which is one of our biggest revenue generators. We have our ferry building, we have recreational, we have South Beach Harbor, we have Oracle Park. So we're very diverse. What I focus on is mainly the cargo operations. And let's see here. Go to the next slide. So we have what we call our eco-industrial marine terminals. And they start around, you know, where Chase Center is at, Mission Bay Park. We have our Pier 68, which is the former shipyard. And it goes all the way down to Pier 96, which is down by Heron Head. That's almost borders the Bayview area of San Francisco. And so at our former shipyard, the shipyard was closed down about 2016. BAE, which operated a shipyard, consolidated all their shipbuilding down to San Diego. And they left behind about 5.5 acres of buildings, which were pretty much all run down, 2 floating dry docks, and there is enough berth space there for us to do lay berthing operations for barges and ships and more of the small to mid-sized vessels that need repairs. We also do the zero emissions fueling for the one of the ferry services that is now zero emissions. We do it there. We are planning to do a request for information to find an operator to take over the shipyard for us. We are a landlord port. We pretty much just manage the property. We do want to convert the shipyard into a mixed maritime use. Because of the trust we have with the state of California, we have to maintain it for some type of maritime use. So currently we're looking at putting in, well, first we have to sell some of our floating dry docks because they take up 2 large spaces of berth. But we're looking at some of the Merit vessels that could be berthed there. Currently, we have 5 Merit vessels that are berthed at the port. Working our way down to Pier 80 Marine Terminal. That is managed by PASHA Terminals. They do a great and fantastic job for us. It's mainly used for railroad, but we also use it for break bulk. The export Tesla vehicles around the world. This year, we'll probably do around 35,000 cars. We started to import some Toyotas and GMs, but that's mainly because the other terminal operators in the Bay Area are getting filled up. There's some disruption in the supply chain for vehicles, and it has to do with the rail systems going transcontinental. Because PASHA operates other auto terminals up and down the West Coast, if they run out of space at their other terminals, they can bring a ship up here and they can distribute from our port. We also have Pier 92, which is our cement batching and sand terminals. We have CEMEX there, we have Hansen, and we bring in sand into CEMEX, and CEMEX provides most of the cement and concrete for the downtown San Francisco and the peninsula. And like KRISTINE said, they're very important for the industry because they do take thousands of trucks off the highway by bringing in the sand and batching them, the cement here at our port. And working our way down to Pier 94, 96. This is our maritime industrial complex. It's about 95 acres. And currently we have Martin Marietta that was bringing an aggregate. They're going to shift over to Pier 92. But we are looking at developing this 95 acres for offshore wind. and I'll be explaining that later. From a cargo perspective, so just some statistics here for the ro-ro vessels. We've had about 25 vessels so far this year, 16,000 vehicles going up to 35,000. And if you look at the graph, you can see that we do more of our bulk in terms of tonnage. Martin Marietta also brings in the sand, and then we also have the automobiles. I already mentioned the shipyard. This is our Pier 80. We are also planning to convert some of Pier 80 into cruise operations. This past April 27th, we have one of the Princess Cruises come in, and Metro, which operates a cruise ship terminal, brought down their facility down and set up a pop-up type facility. The reason why is because under the CARB rules, we're only allowed 19 cruise vessels into a facility that doesn't have shore power. And we only have one shore power for our cruise ships, which is our cruise ship terminal. So we had to divert one of the ships when we had 3 ships in port down to Pier 80 down here. And you can see how close it is to the city. We have a Highway 280, which is only about half a mile away, and Highway 101, which is about 2 miles away. Pier 92, Martin Marietta, they will be moving from Pier 94 to Pier 92, and they are setting up a modern type of a facility that's going to be completely covered. And that's the reason why is because the Bay Area Air Quality Management District has been monitoring their operation, and we have a Bayview community, which is only about half a mile away. So try to reduce the air emissions. They're going to have to make their offloading from barges pretty much enclosed. And for Pier 94, 96, we have the offshore wind industry that we have been following for the last 2 years. We've had developers come out and have given site tours, probably about 4 tours in the last 6 months. This is 95 acres of land, excuse me. As many of you know and have followed offshore wind, the industry is going to be so large that not one port can serve it. So Long Beach and LA, they're planning to build a 300-acre terminal, and most of the work will be going down to LA. Port of Humboldt, they will also have a large facility up there. But those facilities are probably going to take a good 6 to 8 years to build out. Our facility, we already have 95 acres, even though we would have to build up and strengthen the surface. We already have about 35 feet of draft of depth along the wharf. So we can be an early stage development for offshore wind. However, because of the 200 feet airspace underneath the Golden Gate Bridge, we won't be able to build a full tower for the wind industry. What we will be doing is building the manufacturing and fabrication for the foundations. And it also helps that CMEX is only 100 feet or a few hundred feet down the road, and much of the foundations will be made of concrete and cement. We also have an on-dock rail facility operated by San Francisco Bay Rail, which we own. They operate it, and close to Highway 101 and 280. We have an overweight truck corridor going to the highways. And also our Pier 80 and also our Pier 68 shipyard facilities will also be support facilities for offshore wind. We're planning to do a workforce training site at Pier 68, which is the shipyard. And Pier 80 can also store, we have 2 transit sheds. Each one's about 200,000 square feet, so we could actually store some of the equipment over there. Jumping over to cruise ships, because it is one of our larger businesses. So far this year, we've had 60 cruise calls. We have about 34 scheduled for the end of the fiscal year, end of June. We've had 235,000 passengers. Cruise has rebounded very nicely for us. So there has been a rebound of cruisers coming in to San Francisco. Many foreigners, we're starting to hear them speak, with their accents as you walk down the ferry building. We expect about 400,000 total for the fiscal year. The other activities we have at the port, we have had the U.S. Navy's Harvey Milk. It was recently launched down in San Diego. It came up here. We had a launch ceremony with Nancy Pelosi, Congresswoman came in for that. We had a Japanese Coast Guard that comes in every year. We had Sail GP. Sail GP, if many of you may not know, is the Formula One for sailboats. And we host that down at Pier 80. And that happens sometime in July. We also have the Portola Music Festival. During the fall, we have at Pier 80, PASHA works with us to host this music festival. It brings in about 30,000 participants, and it's more like electronic dance music, but it's a big generator, revenue generator for the port. And we also host the San Francisco Fleet Week. Some of the capital projects we have are South Beach Harbor. We have dredging that we continue to do there. We're building out the docks. We're reactivating Wharf J9, which is up past the Pier Fisherman's Wharf. We have ongoing dredging at Pier 35, the Outer Lagoon at South Beach Harbor. And we're also doing some major improvements at Hyde Street Harbor from the fishers up there. Many of you have heard that we have a developer that has made a proposal to the port to redo the entire Fisherman's Wharf. And that's a big project that's still in negotiations with the commissioners. But as many of you who may have been down Fisherman's Wharf in the last few years, we've had many restaurants closed down. It's kind of been run down, and we need to really modernize the entire area.
Charles, you've got to finish off here, please.
Yeah. And some of the equity things we do for the city, we host a youth selling program. PASHA helps us with that. We also have others that come in for Sail GP. We have an internship program with Tides, and we also work with Cal Maritime on internships. And that's it.
Great. Charles, thank you very much. Our next speaker is Ron Brown from the Port of Oakland. Ron, welcome.
Thank you very much, Stas. Todd, I'm going to try to share my screen, and if I can't do it, and I'm not a techie guy, I may come back to you and have you advance them. So here we go. I'm going to see if I can share my screen. I don't know if that's coming through for everyone.
Yep. Yes, it is.
All right. Woohoo. Well, Ron is changing his evil ways. Good morning, everyone. I'm very happy to see that there are quite a few people from CARB on today, because you are very important and just recently attending our AgTC conference up in Tacoma. A lot of the ag shippers all around the world, all around the country, are really interested in what's going to be happening in California. So having said that, I'm going to go through these very, very quickly. They will be available, and I believe Todd and Stas are going to put them on our website. So what I'm going to try to discuss today is a renewing of the Port of Oakland. Our leadership keeps talking about renovating. Well, I'm one of the older guys at the port, and I believe it's more of a renewing than a renovation. So for those of you that don't know, there are 12 ports in the state of California. Oakland is the oldest container terminal on the U.S. West Coast. The Port of Oakland was established actually back in 1927, but in the 1960s, when the whole concept of containerization took place, Oakland was the first port on the West Coast that really aggressively adopted containerization, and everything took off from there. So our neighbors to the south of us, ports of Los Angeles and Long Beach, as you know, are the two largest container ports in the United States, but Oakland has a uniqueness that I think you'll appreciate as I go through this. As I was mentioning, the Port of Oakland, basically 99.9% containerized cargo that goes through our port. One of the things that I have tried to adopt over the last several years is sort of a play on words, but Oakland is the port for the Central Valley, the port for the Napa Valley, and the port for Silicon Valley. And as you look back through these three industries, you'll see, based on proximity, we are the closest port to move containerized cargo for them, to the point where we were actually included in the California Freight Mobility Plan as an essential port or crucial port for agriculture movements all throughout the United States. Oakland is a little bit different than the ports of Los Angeles and Long Beach and many of the other ports in California, being that not only do we manage a large seaport, as I mentioned, which is mostly containerized, we also manage the Oakland International Airport. As some of you know, we just renamed that to the San Francisco Bay Oakland International Airport, which has created a lot of consternation for my friends in San Francisco, but you know, we're going to go with it. We also manage a very large portfolio of commercial real estate along the coast between the Oakland San Francisco Bay Bridge and the Oakland International Airport. That's about 20 miles of commercial real estate that we manage. A lot of that is open space. This is a facility map of our port. I know Susan Ransom is on the call, so I don't want to fail to make it clear that the terminal that she works at, the Oakland International Container Terminal that's operated by Stevedoring Services of America, do handle about 70% of all the cargo moves at the Port of Oakland, and we vastly, vastly appreciate them, and most importantly, we appreciate Susan. Oakland has 3 large international terminals and 1 large domestic terminal, which is operated. The domestic terminal is the Matson Terminal, which is also operated by SSA, Susan's employer. To give you a sense of the cargo mix that comes in and out of our port, as you would imagine, on the import side, a lot of it is consumer products, whether it's consumer electronics, furniture, apparel, footwear, toys, things of that nature. We also import a lot of wine and spirits that come in from Australia and New Zealand. And on the export side, again, by proximity, a lot of our exports are agricultural products and recyclable products, primarily recyclables because they're going primarily back to China, recycled paper and plastic, even glass, and that stuff is being reprocessed into products that we then turn around and reconsume. The new renewing process really started back about, I'll call it about 10 years ago. The picture that you're looking at here is our Cool Port complex, which is a 190,000 square foot temperature control warehouse. It was actually opened in late 2018. And this facility handles a lot of the beef, pork, poultry, fish products, and some other agricultural products that have to go out as either fresh or frozen. As you look at this, and I don't know if my arrow will show up on the screen, but it does have rail access, so it can accommodate up to 36 rail cars simultaneously that can go into this facility and then open up into a temperature control zone and otherwise not breaching the cold chain for those products that do have to be shipped out, chilled or frozen. The next complex is a 460,000 square foot complex that was opened in 2019, operated by PCC Logistics, primarily to do transloading and cross-dock operations at the port. So this facility is actually on port property. The next 3 facilities are actually on the city of Oakland property that was formerly part of the Oakland Army base. But these are sort of, we'll call them sister projects because the cargo that's handled primarily in one of them is international cargo. The other 2 are handling domestic cargo as of now. But hint, hint, that may change in the not too distant future as we're looking at utilizing hopefully those facilities to handle more international cargo. They are state-of-the-art, brand new facilities and environmentally and CARB compliant. Should I say that again? CARB compliant. All right, the next map is really just showing some of the projects that we have going on as we go through this whole process of zero emissions. As you know, a lot of the zero emissions technologies are based around battery electric vehicles, battery electric equipment, or hydrogen fuel cell operated type of equipment. So we have been working with our tenants over the last 5 to 8 years as they've been implementing demonstration projects of some of the battery electric trucks and yard equipment, really just to show what can be done. We know the technology is still developing and some of it needs further development, but a lot of those demonstration projects are being conducted at the Port of Oakland, and other ports in California and throughout the US are observing how these projects are coming to fruition, simply so that they can begin to start adopting some of these technologies as well. The next one is actually a very confusing slide, but what it primarily shows is that we've been going through a process of upgrading our utilities. The port itself is a utility. We buy power wholesale, and then we resell it to our tenants. So we have a number of substations all throughout the port, which we're phasing in and out of different voltages for our tenants, as much as 450,000 volts that can go for the shoreside power for the vessels. This is just, again, another one of those substations that is being upgraded. Again, this port is going through a almost complete renewal process. This slide pretty much shows some of the projects sort of in their entirety. The SSA terminal is going through a modernization process where we're updating the berths, the wharfs to be able to accommodate the bigger vessels, and also updating the vaults on that terminal, the terminals that they operate, to be able to accommodate vessels of varying sizes, because as we established the shore power system, the size of the vessels started growing so quickly that where our vaults were located were a little bit challenging to be able to link into those vessels. So we're coming up with a new system that can be rotated up and down the berth, up and down the terminals to be able to accommodate whatever the size of the vessel that's coming in. This is just showing some of those projects that relate to yard equipment, as you can see. And again, these slides will be made available to you. A lot of the yard equipment that we're working with our tenants with are battery electric or hydrogen fuel cell projects. The top one shows a top pick. For those of you that don't know the technology of containerization, these items can lift as much as 90,000 pounds. So again, all of that equipment is going to either battery electric or hydrogen fuel cell. How am I doing on time, Stas?
You are doing very well. If you've done very well. Thank you very much.
All right, I got a few more, so let me go. All right, so our Arches project, again, we, like the other ports in California, and I'm hoping that KRISTINE and Charles are also participating in this, have been getting a number of federal and state grants to improve our infrastructure. The Port of Oakland has been pretty successful and maybe lucky to be able to accommodate about $600 million of federal and state funding to upgrade our infrastructure. So we're vastly underway planning out those projects. Some of them will take multiple years to even get to the actual groundbreaking process, but a lot of our zero emission projects, we can move on those almost immediately. One of them has been our mobile hydrogen fuel cell system that we put into place. It was done to be temporary because we are building, and happily I can announce that we have completed our permanent hydrogen fuel cell facility. But prior to that, we did install a mobile fueling facility for those vehicles that needed refueling with hydrogen. This is the first element fuel station, the first of its kind in the world. I must say that again, in the world, to be able to provide compressed hydrogen for over-the-road trucks. And we are also making this available for people that have personal vehicles so they can fuel their personal hydrogen vehicles through this facility. So this is the facility that opened up about 2 weeks ago in Oakland. So it's the first in the world, many to come. Moving really quick, a number of projects that we're going to be doing with some of those federal grants. Some of these are projects that have been deferred for many years. We've got a grade separation project that we're going to be doing. As you can see, the top pictures show the older version of this overpass, and the bottom is the newer version of it. So some of these facilities are almost 50 years old and need to be updated. This, again, just shows the geographical area where it's going to occur, but Oakland is working on 2 grade separation projects. In other words, to be able to separate trucks and trains when the process occurs where they both need to be at the same intersection at the same time. A couple of other things that we've done. We've updated our portal for those of you that do look to see where vessels are, look to see what the turn times are for trucks coming in and out of our terminals. All that information now you can find on your phone. So there is a portal, a mobile portal that you can use to look at what the turn times at Susan's terminals. I know sometimes Susan doesn't agree with them, but we do have that information available. We also have camera views of each of the terminal gates, so you can look and see, you know, what's happening at each of those terminals to make sure that there is traffic movement on those roadways. Moving quickly because Stas is giving me the ugly eye. We can also show where vessels are in the bay, but most importantly, where they are at our port. So but some people like to look at that, particularly the beneficial cargo owners, because they try to plan when they want their product, their cargo to be delivered to the port in order to meet the specific carrier cutoffs or the earliest receiving dates for that cargo. Okay, turning basin, a big project for us. We have to do it to make Susan happy. The vessels, as I mentioned, are getting bigger and bigger, and our turning basin is about 40 years old. So it needs to be widened to be able to accommodate the longer ships that are coming through. We are in the process of getting all of our environmental approvals. We've gone out for public comment. We haven't got too much pushback on it. I think everyone knows that, you know, the Port of Oakland is really the industry in Oakland. I mean, everyone thought that we were a sports town. Well, that product has gone away. Oakland is a port city, and you'll find going forward is going to be promoting itself as such. All right, this kind of shows what that turning basin looks like. Again, it's going to be extended so that the vessels can be brought in by Ann's bar pilots, and then they can be turned and then parked at Susan's terminal. Sorry, guys, I don't mean to be personal, but they're both friends, so I figured they'd let me get away with it for at least an hour. Okay, this kind of shows some of the grants that we have achieved and some that we are pursuing. As you can see, a number of them have already been awarded. We've got a number that we are pursuing. Hopefully we'll get up to somewhere about $900 million of projects of awards before this is all said and done. Our friends to the south, as you can imagine, they're in the billions in terms of what they have been awarded, but we're fighting to get our fair share, and I hope the other ports on the call are doing the same. All right, I'll skip through some of that and get to the end. Again, the Port of Oakland is going through a complete renewal process. I'm hoping if I'm around 10 years from now and all these projects are done, to be able to say they were all done very successfully. I expect them to be so. So look forward to your Port of Oakland, your containerized port in Northern California, to be in a whole new port within the next 4 to 5 years. That's it for me, Stas. That's my story, and I'm sticking with it.
Okay, thank you very much, Ron. And yes, the slides will be made available. The recording should be available by tomorrow. We are a little, excuse me, we are a little behind schedule. So I'm going to ask Peter and Greg to step up and please try and stay within the time limit so we can get to our next panel. Peter SCHRAPPEN from the American Waterways Operators. Welcome, Peter.
Thanks, Stas. Hi, everybody. My name is Peter SCHRAPPEN. As Stas said, I'm the Vice President and Regional Team Leader for the American Waterways Operators. I'm based in Seattle. My region includes California, where we have 8 member companies based there and about 20 who operate in the Golden State. For those of you who are not familiar with AWO, we are an 80-year-old trade association that is the tugboat, towboat, and barge industry's advocate, resource, and united voice for safe, sustainable, and efficient transportation on America's waterways, oceans, and coasts. Our industry's 5,000 towing vessels and 33,000 barges comprise the largest segment of the U.S. flag domestic fleet. If you look at the next slide here, let's see.
Do you want us to run that?
Yeah, would you mind? I'll cue you up as we go. But yeah, on that second slide, it really hones in on the importance within California, where California is 3rd among states in waterborne commerce and 4th in economic impact. California is home to over 51,000 maritime jobs, contributing a little bit over $12 billion to the economy and generating almost $4 billion in labor income. On that next slide, you'll see even more points to bolster the fact that you all are a maritime state. And then if I could look at that 4th slide, I wanted just to back up what KRISTINE says and how we stack up environmentally to rails and trucks with their output of air emissions. Tugboats, towboats, and barges are the greenest mode of freight transportation. Rail produces about 40% more greenhouse gases, and trucks emit about 800% more greenhouse gases than the towing industry. Wow, and KRISTINE really hit that well, so I will not belabor that point. Having said that, our members are continually looking to improve efficiencies and environmental sustainability. AWO members brought the first hybrid tugboat to California in 2010, operated the first fuel barge with hydrocarbon capture technology, and have built on this innovation with America's first zero-emission ship getting delivered to the port of San Diego earlier this year with the E-Wolf. Elsewhere in the United States, an AWO member recently christened the country's first electric hybrid inland towboat. Enveloping all of our work is the Jones Act, which is over 100 years old, and that means that vessels need to be American-owned, crewed, and built. These vessels are the eyes and ears of the American waterways, providing security to the nation. It does not matter if these goods are coming to and from one domestic port to another domestic port, or more precisely, one domestic point to another domestic point within our country. All these vessels have to be part of the domestic maritime industry, which we're really proud of. Now, if we can look at the next slide, and we'll stay there for a bit, I wanted to hone in on a few of our priorities. First is the California Air Resources Board recent adoption to the commercial harbor craft rule that really went into effect in January 2023. AWO has identified 4 priorities that we're looking to improve this commercial harbor craft rule. It's about 200 pages long, and in particular, we're looking at ensuring that vessel class societies sign off on new equipment. Secondly, ATVs, we believe, belong in the at-berth rule because they are ocean-going vessels, and their very nature, they do not stay within the harbor. Third, there's clearly not enough funding available to pay for compliance. 4th, vessels are currently allowed to use, we want vessels to currently to be able to use for their useful life. So starting with that first point, the CHC rule mandates the installation of diesel particulate filters and selective catalytic reduction systems on commercial harbor craft. These devices have not been invented for harbor craft, and CARB has bypassed safety in the name of expediency in getting these rules to the public and to our members. So there's simply not enough time for third parties like ABS to do their work to sign up on this new equipment. That's why we're working with Assemblymember Jasmine Baines to introduce Assembly Bill 1122, which says that if CARB mandates equipment on a vessel class society needs to verify it for use before it can be installed. You may have seen the press coverage from District 11 Commander Admiral Sugimoto, where he says that the Coast Guard will not be enforcing the CHC rule until these safety concerns are addressed. I already mentioned the ATV piece, so I'll skip over that, but I wanted to hit on funding. CARB has demonstrated a real ability to alleviate some of the regulatory burden to filling out the paperwork for these grant requests, which we're really grateful for. It's a $1.3 billion unfunded mandate, and we appreciate the flexibility that CARB has shown the light on within that Carl Moyer program in particular. The final point I want to make about the CHC rule is that it further challenges businesses in the tugboat, towboat, and barge industry with the harsh deadlines for compliance. Marine engines have a useful life of 15 to 25 years. One of our requests is that we've had with CARB is to allow our engines to be used for their useful life. We see this mandate of $1.3 billion and the hundreds of thousands of dollars for new engines and the loss of the cost of lost work, all the money that goes into complying with this regulation as a really tough hurdle. So we think that allowing Tier 4 engines to be able to use for life is a reasonable request. Meanwhile, you might have seen that CARB has requested an EPA waiver to be exempt from the Federal Clean Air Act. We've asked the EPA to deny this waiver because we feel this new rule is arbitrary, capricious, and technologically infeasible. We're now waiting, like everyone else, to see what EPA decides. We haven't heard when they might make that decision. But the next deadline for compliance is for engines with a manufacturing year between 2007 and 2009 to upgrade to a Tier 4 engine or apply for an extension. And if we can look at that next slide, I want to mention that we are not a single issue organization by any stretch of the imagination. Our advocacy program is robust. And one example of that is looking at the port access route study, which I mentioned last time I had the opportunity to brief you all. This has to do with the Coast Guard putting together fairways that would then preclude development within these boundaries. We're really pleased with how the drafts have looked. They're sitting in the DC area as the Coast Guard continues to vet this, but we feel like we're in a really good space to allow for vessel traffic to come and go without impinging on mariner safety. If I can switch gears and look at the next slide and talk a little about offshore wind. Interestingly, there's really not that much new from my last update. We continue to see this as the biggest opportunity for our members in decades, because thankfully these vessels that move from point to point have to be flagged with the US flag. And that has to do with the Coast Guard Authorization Act that was most recently passed. And an overarching piece to all this is President Biden's ambitious goal of 15 gigawatts of floating offshore by 2035. And California, not sitting idle, has actually moved past that goal and wants to have 2 to 5 gigawatts by 2030 and 25 gigawatts by 2045. So BOEM's lease sales have brought in about $750 million off the central and north coast of California. These lease sales cover almost 400,000 total acres across 5 different leases, which includes the Morro Bay Wind Energy Area, Humboldt Wind Energy Area to the north, and these could result in 4.5 gigawatts of new wind energy, and it's enough to power about 1.5 million homes. We're pleased that AWO is considered a formal stakeholder. So yeah, we will continue to actively monitor that situation. Before I wrap up, I wanted to share our core competency. If we can look at the next slide, is government affairs advocacy, and we work on that in a variety of ways. Throughout the year, we go to advocate for interests in Sacramento, and we offer tugboat tours where we give congressional legislative staff from Sacramento and from the California delegation in DC a close-up view of our industry. So here's a picture of on board a Crowley vessel with Assemblymember Lowenthal's office. And in the next slide, and I hope these are all synced up. Oh, that's the bargain. Yeah, I was monitoring so closely I should have been. That's the bargain, which we recently had in Washington, D.C. That's Congressman Garcia and some of our member leaders. And yeah, I was just going to mention, I was recently in San Francisco on Friday to attend the Captain of the Port Change when Captain Lamb handed over the reins. So that was a fascinating ceremony. And that concludes my presentation. Stas, back to you.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you very much, Peter. You were the first person to stay in the time zone, so you're going to get an extra special thank you. Thank you.
My stumbling around a little bit, Stas, was me editing it in real time to accommodate that. So there you go.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, our last speaker in this panel is Greg Alexander from AERAS Technologies. Greg, good morning.
Good morning, Stas. My goal is to come in under time. All right, we're going to get through this, get us back on track here. So I am Greg Alexander. Glad to talk to you today about AERAS Technologies, essentially emission capture and control for ocean-going vessels at berth. Right? I want to give a little overview of where we stand on the rules. So CARB has an at-berth rule, which requires regulated vessels to plug into shore power or use a CARB-approved alternative. There's been a rule in place for more than a decade, really focused on container and cruise vessels. That is expanding as of January 1 of next year. So January 1, 2025, ro-ro vessels across the state, as well as tankers in LA and Long Beach, have to comply with the rule. So again, that's either plugging into shore power or using an alternative. The reality is, we'll talk about, there's not a lot of shore power for these vessels, right? So there's a big push, a dozen years ago to build out shore power for container and cruise vessels. But that infrastructure is just not there for ro-ros and tankers. So, everyone knows CARB, is a leader in port emission regulations, really pushing the boundary there. And like I mentioned, the at-berth rule is no exception. It's an aggressive rule to target vessel emissions well at berth. And CARB has been serious about it, levying fines for those that haven't been able to comply for various reasons. Shore power is an option for some vessel types, and certainly is an attractive one for some operations. Obviously, it requires really massive infrastructure investment and serious alignment. Takes a lot of grid power, and the grid is constrained these days. I think currently there are about 65 berths across the state that are shore power equipped. But none of those for, ro-ro terminals or tanker terminals, with one exception. The Port of Long Beach has one berth that can plug in a couple tankers. And AMP, or alternative maritime power, cold ironing, shore power, they're all mean the same. They're not a viable option for boilers, right? There's no easy way to plug in a boiler. So there are some challenges. So alternatives are needed, and that's what we do. So AERAS provides emission reductions when vessels are at berth, right? That's designed to treat auxiliary engines, boiler emissions. It's a barge-based system, as I'll show on a few photos here. So how does it work, right? We coordinate with the vessel prior to arrival. We pull alongside once that vessel is berthed, articulate our connection device to attach to the exhaust port itself, draw and cleanse those emissions while the ship is at berth. We remain there as long as the ship does, pulling off just before the ship leaves, and then provide documentation about that compliance after the vessel after the vessel call is done. So in a nutshell, that's what we do. And respecting time, I'll leave it at that. Obviously, I would say there's a lot of engineering and chemistry and other design functions that go into that cleansing, but big picture, that's what we do. Some of the special sauce, it takes some creativity to engineer the connection devices to work on the types of vessels that we see. A lot of monitoring of the emission flows coming in as well as exiting our system. We use both, in-person and live and remote surveillance to maintain safety and control of the system. Where we target and treat particulate matter, ROGs, and reactive organic gases, and NOx, nitrogen oxides. That's what's required under the at-berth rule. We've been doing it a bit over 1,000 hours on currently, and yeah, like anyone in the maritime space, if it's not safe, you don't get off the starting line unless you've got safety as a primary focus, and that's the same for us. One challenge in our business is that ships aren't all shaped the same, thankfully, right? We got purpose-made ships for lots of different functions. We designed our system to be very flexible there. We can reach a variety of vessels, both in heights and widths and various configurations. We do a modeling process before we get on a vessel, before the vessel arrives, as we're as part of our commissioning, to make sure that we can reach safely. And like anyone, you know, it all is driven by the at-berth rules. So our system is approved by CARB to for certain classes of vessels. We're working to expand that, and yeah, it's been a good working relationship with CARB to get to this point, and we're looking forward over the rest of this year and the coming years to expand what we do, not only the ports we service, but the types of vessels. And with that, Stas, how about that? Under 10 minutes, huh?
You absolutely, you did great, Greg. Thank you very much. Now, I wanted, we've had a lot of interesting information coming out of this first panel, and I want to just see if there are any questions. We have some people from CARB. If anybody from CARB would like to ask a question or make a comment here, or any of the participants, I'm going to open that up for questions at this point. And if you raise your hand on that function, I will be able to see you. Okay. Todd, do you see anybody? Okay. Peter Schrappen.
Stas, I see one there. I see Matt in the conference room raise his hand.
Okay.
Yeah, my question was for you, Greg. On the ships coming in, I mean, I understand that not everybody has access to shore power, but are any of the shipborne emission systems that are out there broadly in the international marketplace actually meeting CARB compliance or capable of meeting CARB compliance? Or is any ship that's unable to access shore power gonna require somebody like yourself and AERAS to help them stay within the CARB limits?
Yeah, that's a great question. I know some of the folks from CARB are on the line. Not to put them on the spot, I suspect they want to take a stab at that. But I think broadly, those onboard scrubbers are generally tuned to a slightly different compliance regime. So the at-berth rule is a bit more aggressive than the IMO standards. Plus, I think that they need to jump through the CARB certification hoops, in terms of demonstration and testing and reporting to meet that standard. So I just, it's going to vary by vessel and by system type, but I think there are going to be some challenges both, in meeting the strict targets of the rule, as well as just the paperwork side of it, which I'll tell you is not insignificant, the paperwork.
Yeah. Thank you very much. I appreciate that.
Other questions? Going once, going twice. Yes, Rachel. Go ahead.
Hi, everyone. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Great. Nice to meet everyone. I'm at CARB and I work on the at-berth reg. I just wanted to chime in on that question about compliance, and nice to see you, Greg. We've worked together on AERAS's applications. So the gist of the at-berth reg is that for regulated vessel types, they do need to either plug into shore power or use a CARB-approved emission control strategy, like the capture and control technology that Greg described, unless that vessel visit qualifies for an exception. And there's a number of different exceptions. I don't want to get into all of the details right now, but basic rule is if you are a regulated vessel type, you either control your emissions unless you qualify for an exception.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions or comments? Going once, going twice. I want to thank everybody on this panel. We covered a lot of ground here. The recording will be available tomorrow, and we will also put up the slides. The issues that are raised here are complicated ones, and we have just given them an airing. And I want to thank Greg and Peter for their analysis and some of the issues that they've raised. The issues of smaller craft and the tug and barge industry obviously are an issue of concern for smaller operators that have limited resources and are trying to maximize the engine life of their vessels. So on that point, I'm going to thank those participants and those panelists, and we are going to go on to our second panel, which is U.S. carriers. And here I should have made a statement earlier on. Maritime Day celebrates the U.S. merchant marine, the U.S. maritime industry, and it gives us an opportunity to check in with people who keep our goods afloat and keep our commerce afloat, as Peter mentioned, and as some of the other panelists mentioned in their port presentations. In that regard, we have 4 panelists today. Ed Washburn from PASHA, a Jones Act carrier serving Hawaii, and also has a robust ro-ro business, as Charles was mentioning, at the Port of San Francisco. TOREY PRESTI with National Shipping, Ann McIntyre with San Francisco Bar Pilots, and finally, Nick Marrone, Vice President with the Seafarers International Union. Ed Washburn, good morning, and what is the view for Hawaii?
Good morning, Stas. Good morning, everyone. Happy to be here. How about I share my screen, Stas? I have some slides.
Okay.
I got it.
You should be able,
Yep. Tell me if I'm good.
I think, yes, you're good.
Excellent. Okay, thank you, and happy Maritime Day. So, yeah, moving along. Here's our crew of our newly delivered Janet Marie. Really, Maritime Day for us is recognition of our crews and a tribute to them. Their work is often unrecognized, uncomfortable, and lonely, and they sacrifice day in and day out the American Merchant Marine. So I'll go to some of the cool projects we've had this year, Stas, and others. We took delivery of our second LNG-powered container ship from Keppel in Brownsville, Texas. It's currently serving the U.S. mainland Hawaii trade lane. LNG is a benefit to the port communities. That's why we decided to run our ships on LNG. It eliminates sulfur, which creates acid rain. It eliminates particulate matter, which is the #1 reason for respiratory disease in our port communities. It also reduces nitrous oxide by 90% and reduces carbon by 25%. So we're really proud about that. Another super cool project that we did is we converted a 1980 steam-propelled ship that had oil-fired boilers to LNG diesel. This is the first time it's ever been done in the world. Huge engineering feat, really, really complex regulatory feat. Came out very well. It's currently in service, again, U.S. mainland to Hawaii. What we did is we basically removed the top deck, removed everything out of the engine room, moved some bulkheads, and put all brand new machinery in, all brand new bridge equipment, new lifeboats, new propeller, LNG tanks, and so the generators and main engines run on LNG. We reused over 15,000 tons of steel. Kind of a unique tidbit on that. The new electric tug in San Diego, which is super cool, and we're thumbs up for it. To save as much CO2 emissions as we saved by reusing 15,000 metric tons of steel, that electric tug will have to operate 150 years, equal that. moving on to that ship started as the Edward Rutledge. It was a last ship, lighter aboard ship. It carried barges. In 1990, well, before that, it was sold to the Maritime Administration, and the Maritime Administration had it in layup for quite a few years. In 1990, Sealand purchased 2 of these ships from the Maritime Administration, and I was with Sealand at the time. And this ship we converted to a container ship in 1990. And it served as a container ship and ran every day from 1990. And in 2024, we just repowered it to an LNG diesel ship, changed some of the cargo configuration. We more than doubled the reefer capacity, kept the same horsepower. We've gained over 50% in fuel efficiency, and we're burning a much cleaner fuel. Some other things we've taken on since last year, we're managing Maritime Administration Bob Hope class vessel, the Nelson V. Britain. This carries tanks and other stuff in times of war. There's over 8 acres of parking with heavy decks on this ship. And we also, with the Port of San Francisco, we lay berth 2 SL7s, same type of ship at Pier 80. Moving on to our next project we're doing this year, our Kapalama Container Terminal. This is a new 80-acre terminal. It'll have 5 cranes. We've just refurbished them. We'll be shipping them over next May from the U.S. mainland. Neat about this terminal, it'll remove 50,000 truck moves because we're on the other side of this canal there. We don't go over the bridge and on the road with the inter-island containers. We'll be able to pass them right to our partner, Young Brothers, who will deliver them to the outer islands. So great improvement there. It's really going to be a state-of-the-art terminal. However, there's no labor reducing automation. It's just going to be really efficient. The other cool thing we're doing there is we're going to be able to run this terminal for 36 hours without the electric grid, without power from Wine Electric Company. And so we're going to utilize crane regeneration when we lower a load, store that in battery energy storage systems. We're going to have solar, we're going to have wind, we're going to have natural gas powered diesel generator. And the goal is operate 36 hours. That would be enough for 2 crane operation, all the yard equipment, and we can discharge our new Ohana class ship and get it out of the terminal to the customers in case there's some earthquake or hurricane or something like that. The island does not have power and the terminal doesn't have power, and we'll be able to get the needed supplies to the people of Hawaii. This is kind of how it looks. Wind wall turbines, regenerative crane, solar, natural gas generator, into battery storage. Also, the grid can come in. The cranes will flow both ways. They'll take power and also bring it back to the batteries. And then we'll have EV chargers. We're going to have a lot of electric equipment in the terminal and then regular terminal equipment in buildings. Some of our challenges that we have coming up, a lot of it is well, first of all, we're a Jones Act carrier. Our main business is supporting Hawaii. In Hawaii now, tourism is slower than it had been prior to the pandemic. A big part of that is the Asia visitors have not rebounded fully. But what has happened is there's a lot of construction going on in Hawaii, so the locals have taken up much of that slack. The economy is growing at a slow rate. We expect it to be less than 2% for the next year or 2. But the labor market is strong, a lot of construction. Maui relief is part of that. Maui is also part of the reason why visitor spending and the visitor economy is down, is many of the hotel rooms in Maui are still booked or filled with people who are living there. So there's a lack of hotel rooms in Maui, and there's a lot of, as I said, a lot of construction workers. This interesting per person per day spend in this chart, going up a little, 243. Before the pandemic, we'd see that over 300 with Asian visitors. So not only the visitor arrival is down, but the spend is down. let's see. The other challenges is always the Jones Act, and it's always being challenged. The Cato Institute is one of the probably biggest challengers or spend the most money. The Jones Act is we're constantly reliable on time. The pandemic is a perfect example of that. We didn't raise our rates, where Trans-Pacific rates were 9x or 900%, and we didn't abandon our customers for the huge profits that were available in the Trans-Pacific. Jones Act also is good for Homeland Security, national security, and economic security. It's $150 billion in the US and 650,000 jobs. The Jones Act is really named after Wesley Jones, a senator from Washington, but it's really the Merchant Marine Act of 1920. And it was introduced to help US shipping after it became depleted after World War I. And the original, the Jones Act protectionism or cabotage laws actually came from England in the 1700s. Moving on, this is American Association of Port Authorities, American Maritime Voices. Anyone who wants the layman's term of maritime, American Maritime, it's a good way to stay informed. And PASHA is a proud supporter of women in shipping and transportation. I'm actually a member, so is George PASHA. They just had their annual meeting in San Diego, and I can tell you that's a powerful group of professionals. And hopefully I kept in time, Stas, and that's the end of my presentation. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Ed, I may have a question on the Jones Act, but let me come back after we finish with the other speakers. That was Ed Washburn from PASHA. Torey Presti, National Shipping. Good morning, Mr. Presti. And again, thank you very much for all of your help.
Happy to be here, Stas. Thank you very much for that. And have a great trip to Taiwan. I think it'll be very insightful to see how the Asians operate ships and things. It's could probably learn a couple lessons there. We're a little behind the 8 ball there. But anyway, good luck. Good luck. And I'll ask Todd, if Todd doesn't mind, if he can help me with the slides, that'd be great.
Sure. Hang on. All right.
And a little bit on the tail of Ed's discussion, we are right in the midst of turning over. We operate the National Glory, which is the next slide, if you don't mind. And we're actually turning over the ship management to Ed Washburn and the PASHA group next month. So we're looking forward to that. And we have all the faith in the PASHA group to perform as they have been, a remarkable group. Anyway, this is the National Glory. She's a 500 TEU vessel. She's deployed. She goes between Houston to Port Everglades into San Juan and back. We've been doing that for 11 years. This vessel was not the usual Jones Act vessel. She was bought under the Forfeiture Act, which meant that the U.S. owned her. And when we bought her on the certificate of documentation, we got the Coastwise endorsement. And this kind of goes back, as Ed alluded to, the English law, the Navigation Acts, which was the pre-runner of the Jones Act back in 1650, and it lasted over 200 years. And Todd, maybe you can switch the next one. There we go, just briefly. It was during the colonization. It was to control the commerce of the colonies, to make sure that if the sugar came out of Puerto Rico in those days, it found its way back to the United States. And the British, French, and Spanish and Dutch did it very cleverly. They basically used all their vessels and they built a merchant marine on the same premises as the Jones Act, the build, ownership, and operation criteria. The laws were challenged. Obviously, it was the Wild Wild West days when you had the slave trade and pirates. Blackbeard, et cetera, and they were all doing something like smuggling or taking prizes. So what happened was over the course of the years that during the piracy days, especially, that any non-compliance of the rules, and that was basically the duty, that if you had a vessel owned by the host country, they either allowed no duty on the cargo coming in, or they limited it. So they controlled everything that went on. And that actually continues a little bit today, but probably for the betterment, I think, of the colonies. I kind of picked these out as Ed mentioned, in 1914, World War I depleted our capacities, and it gained momentum that led up to 1920 to the passage of the Merchant Marine Act of 20, also known as the Jones Act. And that was there, like the Navigation Acts, was to promote the merchant marines of the respective countries. Next slide. And the other one I kind of wanted to pick up on, which I think we made a deviation, and is that in 61, Kennedy established two entities to succeed the U.S. Shipping Board, and that was the Federal Maritime Commission, which regulated U.S. ocean commerce, and that's an independent agency. And then also the Maritime Administration, which was to promote the American Merchant Marine by basically administering subsidies. In the old days, it was operational differential and construction differential. They managed Kings Point Academy, and they oversaw the Ready Reserve Fleet. Now, this is where we made a deviation. Maritime started to join the Department of Transportation. FMC was out by itself, because they both actually came from Department of Commerce. So this is where I think we kind of made a little bit of a mistake, and where we see like the Asian countries like China and Japan, for that matter, they were hand in hand with shipbuilding and freight. So they regulated the commerce, and then that dictated the ships they needed to build, and fostered a very robust shipbuilding after World War II. Speaking to the Jones Act, the Surface Transportation Board replaced the ICC back in '95, but it's really rail focused. It has really little or nothing to do with the ocean carriers. We file electronically our tariffs, but that's all they really want to know about us. So we're, in that respect, somewhat unregulated. Let's go to the advantages of the Jones Act, which we see today, and that is, number one is commerce. There's no one, and I'm speaking directly to Puerto Rico about this, there's no other carriers, global or anybody else, that can give you the frequency of service. You have 6 sailings a week from Florida, that's 2 with Crowley, 2 with Tote, 2 with Trailer Bridge, and then you got 1 from the Northeast, again, Crowley, and then us out of Houston. So the service is fantastic. Transit time is 3 days from Jacksonville to San Juan. And the global guys, if they were able to do that trade, typically hub in the Caribbean at Kingston, Caucedo, Freeport, and they're 15 days. So the service, the commerce is terrific for an island of 3.1 million people. The introduction, for better or for worse, of the 53-foot container with 35% more space than a 40 is a standard in the trade. And people overlook that all the time. And we fit more in a domestic. We look more like a rail than we look like a global carrier. And this is where that whole Cato Institute is off base. So in addition to that, the major Jones Act carriers invested in the cleanest ships, as Ed pointed out, invested in private terminals and the equipment to support a full container operation. No global carrier has that. And if they were to serve Puerto Rico, they do it only on a smaller feeder vessel over a transshipment hub in the Caribbean. Next slide, please. So Puerto Rico's been susceptible to a lot of bad things, especially hurricanes. And if you've seen the last 8 years, Irma, Maria, especially Maria, and then Fiona, there was a tremendous devastation on the island where the island was out for like 20 or 30 days without electricity. So if you can imagine that, and the ambient temperature is what, 85 degrees down there in the daytime. So it was terrible. The Jones Act carriers came to the rescue. Everybody was set up. We sent water, we sent ice, we sent transformers or generators rather, all kinds of things to the island on a very immediate basis and for relief. So the third point I'd like to make is that the Commonwealth is that Puerto Rico is a Commonwealth of the US, and it receives direct benefit or aid from FEMA, DOE, and USDA. FEMA, from the hurricanes Maria, Fiona, and Irma, they actually recently released another $5 billion to repair the infrastructure for the PREPA, which is the PG&E, the electricity department, which is being privatized as we speak. And basically, after the COVID, we all woke up and we learned that, you know, all of the goods that we need for aseptics and Band-Aids and IV solutions, all of these were coming from overseas, and we didn't realize how important Puerto Rico was, and their basis has been the pharmaceutical industry since the 80s. So that in itself is beefing up the whole concept of nearshoring or really onshoring, considering that we're a Commonwealth. Next. Just to give you an idea, everybody talks about rates and stuff. Let's look at the last 5 years. The blue line is the global rates from Shanghai to New York, US East Coast. You probably have to add a couple $1,000s to those numbers to get a Puerto Rico number during those times. But you can see the stability of the Jones Act, always staying within 4 to 4,600. The spike for the global carriers as of today is over 5,000. So you can see again another gyration, all caused by the Panama Canal, the Suez Canal, the going around the Cape of Good Hope. So more gyrations and less stability in the global markets than the domestic market, which is very stable. Next, please. Getting to Puerto Rico next are some of the next slide, please, Todd. Thank you. The good manufacturing, as we talked about, pharmaceuticals is over 50% and has led to a positive balance of trade. So that's been very, very positive. If you buy any Tylenol stateside, it was all made down in the southern part of Puerto Rico. Tourism is brisk and it's not returned to pre-COVID days, but it's getting close. And the large projects are starting to move. The power and generation from FEMA, rebuilding of the infrastructure, but maybe more importantly is the DOE's position. The Department of Energy, led by Jennifer Granholm, the secretary, has done a remarkable job on the island and is basically earmarked $1 billion for sustainable energy. So solar panels, batteries, wind are all beneficiaries. They have a goal like everybody else of 2050 to be self-sustaining. So, and they're on the right track. The COVID has set them back a little bit, but given the fact that the island is nothing but sun, they should be good. The amount of solar panels and batteries, I hate to say it, all coming from China and from Chinese suppliers in Vietnam and Indonesia are flooding the market. Last week, you saw Biden put in the punishing duties of 100% on EV cars, 25% on panels. So there's a big rush to get these things into the United States before the tariffs take effect. And then last but not least, there's a privatization of PREPA. Puerto Rico has been plagued by, I hate to say, the corruption over the years. PREPA is the PG&E of the island, and that is being revamped by a company called Luma, and the guys behind it are New Fortress Energy, a guy named Wes Edmonds. And he's he set up LNG plants and is very active, and he's actually going to take over PREPA. So that's going to be a public company probably in the next couple of years. Next slide, please. The not so good. The population is down to 3.1 million. The trend of immigration stateside continues. The jobs just aren't there, and people are moving off back to the United States, especially the young kids coming out of school are all moving to Florida, Texas, not so much to New York anymore, but the population of Puerto Ricans stateside is about 5.5 million. And then you add the 3.1 on the island. So that's where they should have been if no one migrated there. Not so good. The population is a recipient of food stamps, 43% of the population. Puerto Rico is part of the NAP program, the nutritional program USDA puts out. If they ever pass a farm bill, which is delayed this year, will hopefully be next year, Puerto Rico is pushing for the SNAP program, which is a supplemental, which increases enrollment and increases the benefit. Deaths outnumber births. That's not a good indicator. And the Commonwealth went bankrupt in 2017 with 135 billion of debt. A lot of that, 35 billion or 40 billion, is unfunded pension. And unfortunately, electricity cost is still the highest in the United States at 25 cents a kilowatt hour. The outlook, I think, is promising. If the onshoring and nearshoring movements that we're seeing Mexico benefit, we're seeing Puerto Rico benefit from. So that's a big plus in their favor. And I think we realize that our dependencies and how weak our supply chains really were during COVID. Next slide, please. I had to put this one in. It's not in. Haiti is right now, as you've all been reading, is an absolute mess. It's being run by the gangs. But to fast forward this, back as late last week, President of Kenya was with Biden in the White House, and Kenyans have committed to 1,000 to 1,500 policemen that will be peacekeepers on the island. There's been a lot of talk about that for 2 years. Finally, last week, they started moving some of the Kenyans in. Where this will play an important role is with USAID and the supporting of the infrastructure and these policemen on the island. There will be a lot of US flag freight. We're seeing it now via the NGOs like World Food Program and Catholic Relief. Everybody's avoiding Port-au-Prince where the center of population is. So we are calling, if you can look at the north on this map at Cap Haitian, that seems to be working right now. That's where we're actually calling next month with 2,000 tons of rice and beans. And so Haiti is going to be on, no one knows really what to do with the island, or, you have Dominican Republic on one side, who was tremendously successful. And then you got Haiti on the other side that needs a lot of food, a lot of aid, and just some good governance. So that really wraps it up. I want to thank you for your time today, Stas. I think I was within the 10 minutes. And it's a pleasure to be here today.
Torey, thank you very much. Thank you for the very cogent explanation of the Jones Act and some of the issues that are involved that you and Ed have referenced. Situation in Haiti has gone from bad to worse. We have to hope that things are going to start turning around on that one. Our next speaker is Ann McIntyre with the San Francisco Bar Pilots. Captain Ann, good morning.
Hi, good morning. Can you hear me okay?
We can.
Okay, awesome. I don't have any slides today, and I'm just going to give you a brief business update and talk a little bit about some of the issues we've been working on, and I'll probably give you back some of that 10 minutes. So for those of you that don't know, and I think most of you do, the San Francisco Bar Pilots are the organization of licensed mariners that provide the navigation services for all ships that are calling in our 9 Bay Area ports. So we move ships to the Port of Oakland, to the Port of Redwood City, you know, Richmond, up to Stockton, Sacramento, everything in between. Up until pre-COVID, we also used to move cruise ships in and out of Monterey Bay, but that is no longer happening. We currently have 52 licensed pilots, and we have 5 trainees in our training program. Those of you that have heard me speak previously at this event, you know, we suffered some pretty significant challenges during COVID, and had sought some legislative fixes to stabilize our funding levels. And I'm happy to say that those legislative fixes did stabilize the funding. However, what we're experiencing as far as total ship moves we've kind of reached a new normal, where prior to COVID, we were doing around 8,800 ship moves a year, and we're down to about 7,700 ships now. And that seems to have flattened out. Again, some of the ships are bigger, you know, particularly calling in the Port of Oakland, so there's some economy of scale, but just on the per move basis, we are moving fewer ships. You know, some of the projects that we've been working on with stakeholders, you know, a big one is the turning basin at the Port of Oakland. Again, to accommodate the bigger container ships that are coming in and out, we need to increase the size of the turning basin. And so we've been working with the Port of Oakland, the shipping stakeholders, and the Army Corps of Engineers to provide the operational expertise on that. Similarly, we're very involved in dredging issues, working with the Army Corps of Engineers in the various ports. I know Port of Redwood City, KRISTINE, we just got some good news there, where we were able to increase drafts going up to Redwood City. We are still experiencing some challenges with the ports of West Sacramento, and also with the Port of Stockton, just with the channel maintenance. Which brings me to another issue that we're working on that I think is relevant to the folks that are on the call. We've just started through the Marine Exchange and the Harbor Safety Committee, evaluating whether our current NOAA real-time information system is providing us with the data that we need to, you know, accurately and safely plan transits, in addition to also maximizing cargo. The NOAA has a system, it's called PORTS, and that's an acronym for Physical Oceanographic Reporting System. And we're losing, or not losing sensors, but we're getting to where we need to add new sensors. The system really hasn't been looked at since Exxon Valdez. And particularly in the upriver ports, having accurate water level information is important, not only for vessel transits, but for a whole slew of other, you know, other non-maritime stakeholders, just as far as water management and resiliency. We recently learned at the end of this year, the last published tide forecasts for the Port of West Sacramento are being discontinued, and there is no sensor in place to allow forecasts to be made accurately moving forward. So that's been a big concern for us, and we're just starting work on that with all the kind of the involved stakeholders. Another issue that I just wanted to bring to everybody's attention, I think it's something we'll be talking more about. And there is a committee at the Harbor Safety Committee to focus on it, but whale avoidance within the bay is something that we all need to start looking at. We don't have a lot of formal programs here like they have in other ports, and the marine mammal community would certainly like to see some of the regulation that exists offshore coming into the bay. So that's something, there's a advisory committee, a working group that stood up at Harbor Safety, but I would encourage anybody who is operating a vessel inside the bay to come and participate in that. I mean, I think there's a lot of good new technology that's out there that could be used, but it's something that maritime stakeholders should be paying attention to. Some of the other long-term projects we're working on right now, I know we've heard a lot about CARB on the call already today, and we are no exception. One thing I'd like to report, and again, I think most folks have heard about it, but in 2023, we took delivery of the first CARB compliant pilot vessel in the United States. That's a Tier 4 pilot vessel. It's the Golden Gate. It's our run boat. It mostly operates inside the bay, moving pilots either between anchorages and terminals, or repositioning them to our offshore station boats. That was a $9.4 million project. And it's something that we're very proud of. We are, however, similar to what Peter with the AWO touched on, it's our next fleet of pilot boats, which are our station boats. We have 3 of those boats. Those are the boats that are statutorily required to be offshore to meet the ships 11 miles west of the Golden Gate Bridge. We're facing expiration challenges there that we're not going to be able to meet. Our 3 pilot vessels, 2 of them expire at the end of this year, and the 3rd expires at the end of next year. We've been doing a lot of pre-engineering and design work on these, and what we've discovered is it's going to cost about $22 million to replace each boat, and the total build program will probably be in excess of $80 million. And that's just not money that SFBP has available to us through a bank. We're working with BOPC and CARB and folks up in the legislature to try to address that issue. And lastly, the other thing I'll throw out there just is something I think we all are aware of, but with in the Port of San Francisco, we're the longest serving tenant in the Port of San Francisco. We've been here for, I think, almost 174 years. And, lots is starting to happen with sea level rise and how we're going to be, responding to that, what's necessary as far as infrastructure. And so we're just beginning work on that right now. Will our pilot station be able to stay at Pier 9? Will we have to move somewhere else within the port? But there's a lot of long range planning that has to go along with that. And that's what I had on my list to report today. I'd be happy to take any questions.
Thank you very much, Captain Ann. Before we get to our last speaker, Nick Marrone, KRISTINE ZORTMAN referenced some of the challenges that they have had in terms of getting funding for dredging and getting their ship channel back up to where it should be, which it's getting there, but still not there. And she also referenced the partnership of the bar pilots and your expertise in driving this. in terms of our ship channels, are we getting enough money for dredging to keep our ship channels where they should be?
I can't speak to the funding level. My thought is probably not. I just a little bit about, my background. Before I came to SFBP, I was a pilot on the Columbia River system for 23 years. And there we had a series of 5 partner ports located between 2 states. And we really worked together in advocating for dredging dollars just along the rising tide floats all boats. My observation here is that there's a little less of that cooperation, and that may just be something that I'm not exposed to, but we have certain areas, particularly in serving the upriver ports, where you have to pass through somebody else's area in order to get there, that type of thing, or maybe a ship that is going to be going to Richmond needs to go to anchor. So I think we could do a better job advocating for dredging dollars, for the NOAA ports dollars, all that type of stuff, if we worked together on that instead of separately. It's my experience in advocating, particularly for the dredging. It's the more people that are joined together, the more economic impact you can show to a region, the further you move up in the line. And one area that's done a great job of that is the Mississippi River. When you look at all the funding they're receiving for just about everything maritime, they have a coalition put together called the Big River Coalition, and every stakeholder that has anything to do up and down the Mississippi River, from the Gulf all the way up to New Orleans, Baton Rouge, is all working together on these issues. So I do believe it's something that there are good examples out there that we could learn from and improve.
Thank you very much, Captain Ann. Our last speaker is Nick Marrone with the Seafarers International Union. Nick, good morning, and thank you very much for joining us.
Yes, good morning, Stas, and thank you everybody for participating today. And if there's anybody left,
There is actually, almost everybody's still here.
It's tough being a speaker before lunch. My stomach is telling me so. I just want to check with Todd. Did you receive that link for my presentation? I'm going to put that up last.
Yeah, I got it ready, Nick.
Okay, great. All right. So briefly today, ladies and gentlemen, this year's theme for National Maritime Day, when I heard it being safety, I reflexively nodded in agreement. Safety is always a must, job number one. And for the SIU and all seafarers nationwide, it continues through every voyage, every shipboard safety drill, and is reinforced when a seafarer returns to upgrade his or her rating. We also have our sights set on new fuels and new technology that are on the horizon, which will promise to bring changes to shipboard life. We actively working with United Nations bodies as well as others to help ensure that shipping's response to climate emergency puts seafarers and communities at the heart of the solution, always with an emphasis on safety, training, handling, and operations. I also believe that a work-life balance is a key foundation of safety. Proper rest, sensible schedules, and time on the beach all play a role in helping mariners be more productive, more efficient, and more likely to stick around in the industry. That's also consistent with what we've always promoted in the labor movement. Some of you have heard the old saying, 8 hours for work, 8 hours for rest, 8 hours for what we will. And while that's not necessarily realistic for a mariner, even on a normal day, the concept is valid. We must do better at providing a real work-life balance for our current mariners with a view towards the next generation. Although National Maritime Day honors our mariners from every era, we in the SIU are ever mindful that 1,230 of our members, alongside with hundreds of our other brothers and sisters from the Master Mates and Pilots, Marine Engineers Beneficial Association, Sailors Union of the Pacific, the Marine Firemen and Oilers and Water Tenders, and the American Radio Operators, paid the ultimate price in World War II. Over the years, I've met a lot of World War II veteran mariners, and they are truly the greatest generation. I've studied the history and sat with the men themselves. They kept going back to sea because they loved their country and they wanted to contribute to victory. In many cases, they ended up in the Merchant Marine because they had health issues that precluded military service. The military may have said they were 4F, but our mariners were A1 to us and the war effort. I see a similar passion in today's membership. When the balloon goes up, our sisters and our brothers will answer the call. They are proud to be part of America's fourth arm of defense, and they know that in times of crisis, our troops depend on them to deliver the material needed. They will not let anything stop them from fulfilling that most critical mission. It takes a unique person to go to sea or to sail on our Great Lakes and in the waterways. Despite effective efforts by labor and management alike to promote safety, there are dangers that come with the job. Very often, work means prolonged separation from loved ones. Our seafarers, like our armed forces whom they support, also sail in harm's way to deliver the goods. We are doing it today in the Red Sea, and who knows where else in the future. One thing is certain in today's world, there will be a where else, and we will be there to support that mission at hand. It also takes a dedicated, well-trained person to be U.S. Merchant Mariner. Today's seafarers must jump through so many hoops before climbing the gangway. There are physical requirements and background checks, not to mention an array of job-specific credentials to secure through training. As you know, automation on ship and ashore means less and less time in port. Many ships can discharge their cargoes, reload, and sail in less than a day, sometimes even in a matter of hours. But our dedicated mariners keep coming back, voyage after voyage, month after month, year after year. On National Maritime Day, let's pause to thankfully reflect on everything that they do to carry out the traditional role of America's fourth arm of defense. Their work isn't easy. Their days are long. For many, the end of watch means heading back to their cabin rather than going home to their family. And yes, the industry has been providing the latest technology to connect with family, and it's a game changer. But it's still a personal sacrifice on both the mariner and his or her family. In conclusion, the U.S. Merchant Marine has been a key part of this nation since America's earliest days. And in all the years since then, the one thing hasn't changed and never will. Give us the ships, give us the cargo, and we'll deliver. So that was the statement for the Maritime Day theme of safety, and it's an important one. We have a lot of challenges here in supplying merchant mariners to sail our American flagships, as the romance of that has long gone by with the quick turnaround times and a lot of the things that I had mentioned in my statement. But we continue on, and we're going to continue on. And we're very strong about how we plan on moving forward. And with that, I would like to have Todd show you a little video of our training program for men and women that are looking for entry into our industry. And if anybody out there has somebody that they feel would really appreciate this opportunity, please consider sending them our way. Go ahead, Todd.
Okay. Sounds.
They make sure all of us stay connected around the world. Seafarers ensure our products and people get to where they need to be. Through hard work and commitment, they keep our global economy strong. So are you ready for a challenge? To be respected, for job security, to see the world. Are you ready to say,
I'm a seafarer. I'm a seafarer.
I'm a seafarer.
I'm a seafarer. The Seafarers International Union represents the top trained, most efficient crews of U.S. Merchant Marine, sailing across all bodies of water aboard U.S. flagged vessels. A key to meeting the standard is the Paul Hall Center for Maritime Training and Education. The 70-acre waterfront campus just south of our nation's capital has been training individuals for successful careers at sea since 1967 and includes a state-of-the-art firefighting and safety training facility. The Unlicensed Apprentice Program includes 4 phases of classroom and practical instruction with time spent learning aboard the training vessel Freedom Star. In our UA program, students dive deep into skills needed for deck, engine, and steward departments on board a vast variety of ships.
The facilities here at Piney Point are state-of-the-art. The instructors are great. Your room and board, all your training is covered at no cost to you. All you have to do is put in the work and you're guaranteed a job.
Upon completion of the UA program, students will sail aboard a U.S. flagged ship and will become a full member of the Seafarers International Union.
If I were a young person today, I would highly recommend that they come and look at this school. There's a lot of skills you can learn, make a great living, and have security with the union with great benefits.
The Paul Hall Center offers opportunities for graduates to return and upgrade their classification, and has a learning track leading to an associate degree in applied science.
It really has been an amazing journey at school. Not only has it given me skills that I need for my time at sea, but I've also been able to come back and upgrade my classifications to help advance my career. And now, I can really call myself a seafarer.
Now's your chance. Here's your opportunity. Learn from the best. Become the best. Your journey begins here. Are you ready to say, I'm a seafarer?
I'm a seafarer. I'm a seafarer. I'm a seafarer.
For more information, check out our websites at mymaritimecareer.org or seafarers.org.
That was great. Nick, thank you very much for that. I'm going to ask one quick question of our maritime panel, and you touched on it, Nick. There's a shortage of mariners. In one of the news services today, the question was asked is whether the maritime shortage is going to lead to the end of the Jones Act. And obviously, we're trying to deal with that. But Nick, do you want to touch on that question?
Sure. I mean, there's a lot of commitment to providing American mariners. As you can see, the union and its contracted companies operate a training facility down there in Southern Maryland. It costs a lot of money. We provide these students with free room and board while they're on campus going through their training, guaranteeing their first job. You have the state maritime academies also trying to provide continued qualified seafarers, and of course, Kings Point. And then there are a bunch of sub-schools out there that are in San Diego. You can go down and get your certifications to get entry into the maritime industry for what's required. So the industry is pretty unified and realizing the shortage and what we have to do to meet tomorrow's challenge. And we work closely in meeting that challenge.
Very good. And one last question, and this is for Ed and Torey. We have an increasingly perilous situation on the Pacific with tensions related to China and Taiwan, and on the European front with potential threats to Europe stemming from the Ukraine-Russia war. And one of the issues that continues to get raised is whether we have sufficient sea lift ships and whether we need, as the Secretary of the Navy has referenced, the need to start building more U.S. flagged sea lift ships, which in context of the challenges about crewing make this problematic. And I'm wondering, Ed or Torey, what do we need to do to be building more sea lift ships to support our national security needs?
I can start, Torey, if that's all right. Sure.
Thank you.
So, yeah, specifically on the West Coast, we don't have a vigorous trade of imports to the US. So the East Coast has some capacity. ARC is probably the biggest. But we don't have a good export trade for US flagships with government impelled cargo. So what do we need? We need the SHIPS Act, like the CHIPS Act, and we just have to invest. You know, China from 2013 to 2023 invested $108 billion in their shipping and shipbuilding industry, and that's why they're number one. There's no other reason, and we can do the same thing.
Okay, thank you very much for that, Ed. Torey?
No, I think Ed hit it on the nail on the head there, Stas. We've been left behind, no doubt about it. And especially the Far Eastern countries, Japan, Korea, China now have taken the lead, and they've made the investments. I mean, I used to get all upset. I've worked for 3 bankrupt U.S. flag companies, starting with Pacific, Far East Line, U.S. Lines. Thank God APL didn't go bankrupt. But the fact remains is that we did not invest in the industry like the people, I hate to say, like Maersk Line and the Chinese in the shipbuilding. And as I pointed in my thing, that we departed from commerce. So we have no really business in commerce anymore. If there's a bright light, I think it's those training ships that are coming out of Philadelphia. That will help in need of, especially during a natural disaster. Not only does it train the students and the seamen, but it could surely help in case of national disasters, which we know are going to occur.
Okay, very good. And one last final question for one of you. The continued threats to the Jones Act, are we going to see some effort to curtail or replace the Jones Act?
The Navigation Acts lasted 200 years, Stas, and the Jones Act is only 104 years old. I think it is so intertwined and intermingled with steel and shipbuilding and unions and private enterprises. It's going to be very difficult to unravel. And let me just bring this point up, because we lost him last year. Nick's boss, Mike Sacco, who passed away, there was no better advocate for the Jones Act on either side of the aisle than the SIU. So no, I think the Jones Act is safe.
Very good. Okay. On that note, I want to thank everybody who participated. We had a very long agenda. I want to thank the ports people, KRISTINE ZORTMAN, Charles LABITAN, Ron Brown, Peter SCHRAPPEN, and Greg Alexander for the first panel. And of course, our U.S. carriers, Ed Washburn, TOREY PRESTI, Captain Ann McIntyre, and Nick Marrone. Guys, I want to thank you all very much. Our maritime industry, and it sounds like a cliche, but is at a crossroads. And something needs to happen. I think that Ed's reference to the SHIPS Act really needs to be moved forward. We may not be as glamorous as CHIPS, but in the end result, things move by water. And if we don't have that kind of support, if we don't have that kind of mobilization, we could be faced with a two-front situation, and nobody wants that. And as Torey referenced, we need to start investing, and we need to start getting much more serious about shipbuilding. On that note, I want to thank you all very much. Wish you a safe rest of the year and hope that we have a better outlook for 2025. Gentlemen and ladies, thank you very much for your time, and we look forward to your continued participation and support.